Welcome to the AZ Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Hamid Chojai. Let's go. All right, and we're live with Bob Loggia, founder of Appointment Plus. Bob, you're not supposed to laugh during the intro, by the way.
Looking at you dancing makes me laugh. I can't help it.
It's good that we have video of this so that I can show I wasn't quite dancing, but that's cool. That's cool. We're also live streaming on Clubhouse, which I'm super excited about. I feel like it's serendipitous. It's our first episode for the AZ Tech Podcast, and the live stream on the Clubhouse allows us to actually take questions from people who know you or who are listening to this podcast towards the end of the conversation that we have. So welcome to the Clubhouse listeners. Hey, Bob.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. What's new?
What's new? Just sold a business.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's going on.
All right.
It's been great. It's been a really good experience.
You sold Appointment Plus.
I did.
Or was it the hot dog stand that we were talking about earlier?
It was not the hot dog stand.
Okay. You still have that.
No, I go to the hot dog stand
Are
every
you
day
gonna
to eat hot dogs.
Are you going to franchise the hot dog stand? Or because I want to buy, I also sold the business and I want to see if I can franchise the hot dog stand. Is that
Absolutely.
something? Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. Is there going to be high franchise fees or?
Yes, especially for you.
Don't worry. I had a Quiznos. I'm used to it. All right. So this morning I check out aztechbeat.com and I see a story, 1 million vaccination appointments done through Appointment Plus software. That's your company. I want to know all about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Appointment Plus is a general scheduling system. It can work for any kind of use case. But recently, we've just been inundated with requests by pharmacies, health departments, other entities that take appointments for vaccinations. And it feels like our entire business just shifted to this. And we have really big organizations using us, which is cool. And the best thing about it, though, is the way it's making our employees feel, because it's really making a difference. And it's one thing to, service a pet groomer or a hairstylist and, helping the small business owner with their business and their appointment scheduling. But to be able to actively be part of solving this problem, being a solution to this pandemic, by helping people get appointments for vaccinations is really, really cool. And, it's a message I keep sending out to the team. What you're doing is really important. It's always been important, but even more so now.
You're essentially, by being in the chain of events in order for someone to get vaccinated, you are directly in what's the right word that I'm looking for? You're in the line of events that saves lives. And that's the way we're going to get out of this thing is through vaccination of 70, 80% of the population. So your software is helping make that possible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, does that, when you think about that, does that make you emotional sometimes? Or is it just no big deal?
So you're going to try to get me to cry.
A little bit.
Do a good job with that. Yeah, I do get emotional talking about it because it is part of the process. And we all know the walk-in model for this is not going to work. There's way too many people trying to book appointments or get the vaccination. There's the whole problem of who gets it when. And appointment scheduling helps solve all those problems. And just talking to some of the people in the pharmacies and in the health departments that are on the front lines, it's a game changer. It's so stressful to them to take all these phone calls, all these people walking in asking these questions and trying to schedule without a booking system. And so this just changes everything for them.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, it's been great.
Would you say this is the most positive impact for the world or humanity in general that your product has been used for?
Yeah, I would say so. There's been some interesting use cases, hurricane relief, that sort of thing, getting appointments for people with insurance companies related to that.
What about Discount Tire? Aren't they a customer? Changing your tires is pretty freaking important, right? I just want to...
Yes, that's important.
Okay.
Costco Tire.
Discount Tire is not a customer?
No,
Costco.
they're not.
Forget
currently.
Discount Tire. I'm not going to
Yeah,
Discount
we don't
Tire
talk
anymore.
about Discount Tire.
All right,
Yeah.
that's their loss.
Although that's where I go to get my tires.
Are you
changed.
serious? You don't even
Yes,
go
I
to
know.
Costco? Costco is like the best company. I mean, they have
I
the best
know.
service. Why would you not go to Costco?
Force of habit.
Wow.
I just like Discount Tire.
I hope Costco Tire is not listening.
Me too. Me too.
And all right, so you just mentioned you recently sold Appointment Plus. Why?
Why? Well, that's a good question. I don't know if it was for sale. I wouldn't say it was for sale.
Okay.
Although there have been some attempts over the years, even hiring a banker at one point to try to get the company sold. But recently, we haven't been doing that. We've just been focusing on growing the business and servicing our clients. So this kind of came to us. We were not actively looking to sell, and it ended up being just a fantastic situation. The acquirer is DaySmart.
Okay.
DaySmart is a software company, and they also do scheduling software, but they also have a business management component to the scheduling piece, so point of sale and that sort of thing. So it's a natural fit, and the fact that we are strong in some verticals that they don't currently serve, and we're more of a horizontal scheduling system, just works in perfectly with what they're doing. So they came along. They're looking to acquire several companies. They want to get to 100 million in revenue, and then look to be acquired. And so we're, of course, helping them jump closer to that. But the whole experience has been a positive one. Other than due diligence, which I know you've been through twice now in the last year.
I don't know why they call it due diligence. They should just call it hell. God, it's literally hell, right? Like,
yeah, I think about these serial entrepreneurs. I just sold my business. I want to start my next one and sell it. I don't ever want to go through due diligence again.
Yeah, due diligence, it's bad.
It's bad.
And it's funny because you hear that it's bad from other entrepreneurs when they go through it, but you don't know like how bad it is and how stressful it is. And
yes.
So before we get into that, are the deal terms disclosed? No. You're shaking your head. So this is, a lot of people might be listening. Maybe at least 3 people are gonna be.
My mom, your mom.
Well, there's people listening on Clubhouse, so this is pretty awesome. I mean, but deal terms are not disclosed, but it was at least tens of dollars, right? You'll finally be able to pay back that $20 you owe me, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, the interest rate is so low. So.
Yeah. Speaking of interest rates being low, it's crazy. It's almost like negative now, like where you have to pay banks to put your money in the bank, which is kind of crazy.
That is a bit crazy.
I mean, are you saving? Okay, so you got a pile of money. Did you put it in the bank or did you put it in GameStop? GameStop stock. It's so much easier to just say GameStop, right? Like rather than GameStop stock.
Of course, I put it into GameStop.
Did you?
Who didn't?
No, are you serious right now? Okay.
Hell no. Okay, watching GameStop is like watching a real-time pyramid scheme.
Totally. Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, Ponzi scheme. That's what I feel like I'm watching when I see the behavior going on.
Bernie Madoff, he's like, fuck this, I'm in jail right now for exactly this, right? Like,
yeah.
But at the same time, you're like, there's something wrong on the other side as well, which is the hedge funds having oversold or like shorted the stock by what was it, 140% or something like that, right? How is that possible? How's that legal?
I have some thoughts about that. Kind of going back to the Reddit group, the Wall Street Bets group, that let's find these stocks that are highly shorted and really stick it to these hedge funds that short these stocks. There's a couple problems with that line of thinking. First of all,
concept is good though. Would you agree? Because it's like trying to stick it to people who are trying to stick it to other people, right? Like, well, in a way, I mean, the concept is good. Okay.
So first of all, hedge funds are not the only entity that shorts stocks. Individual investors do that all the time.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
You're not just screwing a hedge fund; you're screwing your neighbor potentially by doing what you're doing.
Okay.
The other thing is, who invests in hedge funds? pension funds, other institutions. There are high net worth individuals who do that as well. But
so fundamentally, you're of the opinion that the hedge funds are also like representing the people.
Yeah, like who benefits from a pension fund? Teachers, your average working class person,
Okay.
as a pension. So it kind of trickles down a little bit when you get beyond the fat cats related to these hedge funds that we want to screw. There's a lot more to the story, and I don't feel like it's really being thought through well enough.
Okay. What about short selling in particular? Like, what do you think about that? And I know we're getting way off topic because but I love discussing these things with you. I mean, this is what we talk about at lunch, right? We're like, and this is what this podcast is going to be about. So I hope people like it, but we'll see where it goes.
Have you ever short sold a stock?
Short sold? No, I've bought put options on a stock before.
Okay,
and
right.
I realized I can't time shit the stock market. So I started buying puts on AOL when AOL was valued at like 300 billion. It became like worth 500 billion after I bought put options on it. Later, it became worth like 4 billion. So fundamentally, I was right, but my put options had already expired. So,
so you're actually a pretty good stock market timer, because I remember you told me mortgage your house, take out as much money as you possibly can,
and put it in
buy
Tesla
stock. That was about a year ago, maybe
almost 2 years, year and a half, 2 years.
Year and a half ago. Okay. So what I did was I'm like, come on, Hamid, Jesus. I'm like, okay, I'll put some money into Tesla stock. What the hell? Just to appease you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that advice.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it.
You still haven't paid me back the $20 you owe me. You sold your company. You made a shitload of money on Tesla, and you still are refusing to pay me back. But that's okay. That's all right.
And I know you can't talk about Tesla stock. I know it hurts to talk about it.
Well, I made a ton of money on Tesla stock. I won't lie, but I did exit most of my position, not all of it, but most of it. Yeah, I mean, just fundamentally, I'm a big believer in that. I have to be willing to pay the entire market cap of a company if theoretically I had that much money for the company, right? So, if a company is valued at 100 billion. I say, if I had 100 billion, would I buy this company with this much revenues and profits and so on? And if the answer to that is yes, that's the only way I would buy their stock. So, but anyway.
Yeah, and I remember you asking me pretty much every month, have you sold that Tesla stock yet? As it continues to go up and up and up.
Let's not talk about that.
My answer is, no, not yet.
No, that's good.
But
I wasn't, maybe I was at some points, but anyway. Go ahead.
But what I was going to say was, my answer was always to you, I'm a long-term investor.
Yes.
I hang on to great companies. Well, I'm getting a little nervous right now. And
about the valuation?
Yeah. About
Tesla in particular?
No, the entire market.
Entire market.
And I know people have been saying this for a really long time. But I may change my mind slightly about being a very long-term investor. I'm just kind of following things a lot more closely than I have in the past.
Okay, so there's $2 trillion more coming into people's hands potentially soon. Do you think that's going to also cause the stock market to continue its rise for the next year potentially?
I do. You know what they say, it's a bull market until proven otherwise.
Right.
And it can go on and on and on for a very, very long time, but all markets correct to some extent. And the question is when and how much.
Right.
Right. So I have some financial goals that I want to achieve, and a lot of it depends on how the stock market does over time. So anyway, I've just been paying more attention to it and just noticing some things like margin debt, for example. Margin debt is at the highest level ever. And I've even thought about, I have a lot of money in the market, and I've even thought about using margin at times on dips.
Interesting.
And then I'm like, what the hell am I thinking?
Okay, so
why would I even do that?
You sold Appointment Plus.
Yes.
You're still working at Appointment Plus, just to be clear.
Yes, I am.
Because we got off track for quite a bit, but this is fantastic conversation. I want to keep it going. But so you started learning about investing, or did you already know, and are you just accumulating more, or like tell me what, as a result of exiting Appointment Plus, are you like paying much more attention now to the stock market, or what are
Yeah, because I have more money in it now.
Okay.
I've been investing for years. I would not call myself a sophisticated investor by any means, but I've definitely been investing for a long time. I'm just paying a lot more attention to it because of the amount of money that I have in the market now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So
Yeah.
do world problems as a result of having money in the market like concern you more now? Like
There's problems in the world? Like what?
Oh, there's been said to be like political problems, social media problems, people, like climate problems. Apparently, the Earth being flat problem. All kinds of problems like that. So, what are your thoughts on are you optimistic about the future, or are you thinking that there's a potential of collapse? What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. So one of the book Blink.
Yeah,
This book.
it's a few years old, right?
Yeah. It's,
okay.
Yeah, it's a couple years old. Talks about this concept of a thin slice. So it's basically pattern recognition.
Right.
That if you're looking at something, long enough, you start to recognize patterns without even realizing that you are.
Yep.
And what's happening, a pattern recognition that I have, which sounds kind of strange, is when things look like they're really good in the short term, and what I'm talking about is we now have a vaccine, right? So there's a light at the end of the tunnel with the pandemic, which has direct implications on business and the economy and all of that, people going back to work, right? That should all be positive going forward. That tends to be when other things happen, some bad things happen.
Okay. So bad things haven't happened since the past couple of years. I see what you're saying. We've been having it really good past couple of years, and
yeah, it's been kind of a frenzy. Can I swear?
Yeah.
Can I call you kind of a jerk or?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I mean, as long as it's truthful, we fact check everything over here.
Things have been great. Where you been? Fantastic.
Well, I don't know. I was heads down, and then I was doing due diligence, selling my company. What do you think?
The stock market, once it took that big dip earlier this year,
last
in
year.
2020, has been doing great.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about.
Gotcha.
It's just been on a tear.
So you're specifically referring to the stock market sort of being overdue, or potentially something's going to happen with the stock market later.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a big concern. But what about like anything in world news that sort of concerns you? It does the rhetoric we hear on like world affairs, and I don't know, just all of the problems that seem to have been amplified over the past year and a half. Do any of those things concern you from the standpoint of what you think about the future, or for your kids even, or for your daughter? One kid, not kids, plural.
As it relates to the stock market, the economy, that sort of thing, I've been paying more attention domestically to what's going on, not so much globally. Globally, it's more what's going on with the pandemic is what I've been more focused on. But, with the regime change, obviously, and of course what's been happening over the past 4 years, politics has been front and center. And the changes that are going to happen with the Biden administration, a lot of that remains to be seen. Although you can see the wheels turning in a lot of areas.
Right.
But one thing I was going to say about politics is, I said it's front and center, and my friend who just follows politics, knows it inside and out, is really a student of politics. What he said is, government never was meant to be this big a part of our lives. It was meant to kind of operate in the background, supporting us, allowing us to do our thing, that sort of thing. Not every single day, every conversation is about politics.
Right.
Every time you turn on the news, it's all about politics. So it's a good thing in the regard that people are way more aware of what's going on politically. But we also know there's some downsides to it, as we've all seen.
And there's downsides to the way media covers everything too, right?
Yeah.
Like, because the media is not about informing; it's more about getting viewership. So, because of the whole advertising model of media in general, it has become like, how can we get more eyeballs? And in order to get eyeballs, you have to create controversy, even if it doesn't exist, right? Like, it.
Yeah.
So these are what I'm
Yeah.
talking about when I say like big problems. It just seems like there's a lot of big problems that feel unsolvable, right? Like everybody has like the wrong incentives to create chaos in a way. And as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, we're sort of like looking at the world as it is in a lot of ways. Like I think entrepreneurs are very pragmatic people in that sense, that they look at the world as it is and they
Yeah.
like find opportunities and then they're like, go right here, right? Like here's an opportunity. We need to sort of like,
Yeah.
I can make a difference right here in doing this.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
in a way, entrepreneurs might be our way out of this, right? Like you got climate change. You have people like Elon Musk who are like, well, we got to solve climate change. So create a company that its mission is about adapting sustainable energy.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, politicians not big supporters of Elon Musk. It's just it's ironic in that sense, right? Like, what? So you're optimistic about the future, but potentially pessimistic about the stock market. What makes you optimistic about the future in general? Let's say decades from now, not necessarily short term.
I want to cover something you said about the media, and then we'll
Okay.
come back to why I'm optimistic about the future. When I traveled abroad when I was younger, so I came out of college and went to work for a company called Accenture, and I traveled a lot during my 5 years with Accenture, and I went on a sabbatical after my second year with the company, and I just did the backpacking thing through Europe. Just took 3 months off and just traveled all over the place. And one thing I realized was we always have the impression that other people in the world are a bit brainwashed. What I realized is that we're brainwashed also. What we get from the media, it doesn't matter what side you're on, is an angle. It's a viewpoint of what's happening.
Yeah, they literally call it spin rooms, right? Like because they take
not
any
really,
news and spin it in the direction that they have a
Yes.
preconceived or pre-written agenda.
Yeah, so whether it's our own politics or whether it's things that are happening in the world, it's through a lens. And I painfully learned that just in talking to people in other countries. And then I came back and I saw our media differently. And so that's just an interesting thing about what's been happening, like you said, with the media and what they're motivated by. And we take it as news. This is the news. And
Right.
this is fact. And it's not necessarily fact.
Well,
It's a view of what has happened,
right.
whether it's fact or not.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
a lot of people do push back on media, just to be
Yeah.
fair, but
Yeah.
it's more like fighting. It's shouting. Like it's like,
Yeah.
you guys are crazy. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, you guys are crazy. But obviously, I'm right. But
Of course. course.
everyone has that viewpoint. So going back to
Yeah.
your optimism for the future, where does that come from?
So if you look at some of the negative things that have happened on social media, so it kind of gives people an outlet to, voice opinions they wouldn't necessarily voice in person. There's that anonymity related to the internet to be able to do that, and we see the problems that's caused. I feel like that direction is actually going to cause a shift in the other direction at some point. And I don't know what that shift is going to look like. But I feel like what's going to win out is the innate good nature of human beings. I truly believe that humans are good inside. And, we talked earlier about this hiking situation I had recently.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the story about that. And it just kind of supports my view that humans are actually good. Even though sometimes in the media, it doesn't always seem like that. Some humans are good and some are bad, right? Depending on what station you watch or what you read. So I was hiking Flatiron Mountain,
Okay.
which is in the Superstitions. It's a very difficult hike. Part of why it's difficult is there's a lot of scrambling, which is using your hands to climb. And got to the top and was on the way down, when I heard somebody falling. And I'm trying not to get choked up as I tell the story, but
This is going to be great. If you get
Yeah.
choked up a little bit, it's okay.
you can't wait, can you?
It's like my first podcast, and if I can get Bob
Yeah.
Loggia to have some tears, it'll be amazing.
Okay. So I couldn't see down the trail. It's heavily wooded, and there's rocks and twists and turns. I couldn't see down the trail, but I could hear somebody falling. You could hear the rocks falling like a little avalanche. And then you could just hear the other hikers calling out for help. And so I luckily had cell service, and I called 911 and kind of explained the situation. And, as hikers were coming up, I kept asking them, is the person conscious? Like, do you know what happened? Just trying to get any information I could. I was just kind of getting a little bit here and there, but enough to tell search and rescue what to do. And so they were going to send a helicopter. So I hiked down to the person, and she was sitting, and there were people around her, kind of assisting her, holding her, trying to keep her warm because it was cold that day. And this was New Year's Day. She is the luckiest person in the world on New Year's Day because she fell probably 50 feet.
Wow.
And she had a backpack on. She landed on her backpack and just kind of went down on her back, flipped over a couple times, ended up with a bruise on her head and, hurt shoulder, hurt knee, but she was actually okay. So as we were kind of there around her, again, trying to keep her warm, trying to talk to her because she was in shock. What happened was really interesting. Every hiker, this is where I get choked up. Every hiker that went by stopped to offer something. Water, food. Some people literally gave the shirt off their backs.
Wow.
And it was cold out. This one guy, he was actually going down the mountain, and he took his shirt off, and all he had was a T-shirt on. And it was like a sweatshirt. He gave the sweatshirt to her and just kept hiking down and said, don't worry about it at all. And she was still shivering, even though we had layers on top of her. And I just was thinking, you know what? I don't know the political affiliation of any of these people that stopped. I don't know their nationality, their ethnicity. I don't know. I don't even know what they believe in. But it didn't matter. It was just these really good people helping out another fellow human being in need.
Right.
And I thought, that is really, really cool. And so, eventually the helicopter came, and I don't know if you've ever been under a helicopter, but holy shit.
Windy.
Windy, and cold.
Yeah.
And so, they let two people down. They put her in this sling, and they took off with her down the valley. And it was interesting because they did not pull her into the helicopter. So she's hanging with this guy, probably 50 feet of line, just hanging with this guy down the valley in this helicopter. It was really an interesting sight to see. And then,
Go ahead.
Yeah, and then it was probably 4 p.m., maybe a little bit later than that, and still I was 2 hours up, so I still had 2 hours down to the bottom of the mountain, and I was getting a little worried, but I took off down the mountain, and probably a minute down, I just had to stop because I was overcome with emotion. Just the whole thing about what happened with this woman, and the fact that she's going to be okay, and just that these wonderful people stopped to help. All of it just flooded into me, and it was, it was a really cool moment to just kind of sit there and reflect on what happened,
right.
And then I kind of continued down the mountain. But it really got me thinking that with everything that we're hearing, all the negativity, all the hate speech, everything that's going on, inherently people are good. It just kind of reminded me of that.
That's awesome, and that's a great example of why you think that our future is going to be bright because people fundamentally are good, and the way it's being played out or perceived way that it's being played out is largely a result of the way that we're digesting the information that's being given to us through media or social media, both are part of the problem, which is kind of interesting. Okay, so let's move on from world problems. We started talking about investments, and I want to go back to actually before we talk about investments again. Let's go to Appointment Plus. I never did ask you, how did you start Appointment Plus? So we're going off of a very different tangent because I don't want to dwell too much on the world politics. People want to know about you and how you started the company and became an entrepreneur. So we'll come back to a lot of different topics that I want to talk about, and I don't know how much time we're going to have. So we'll see. Go ahead and.
Yeah. So I talked about how I worked for Accenture for 5 years. I quit. I quit to start a business, and I didn't do well with that business. It was a learning experience. It was a good experience. It was necessary to kind of prepare me for what was next, but it was painful. It was one of those where at the end of it, I had nothing to my name, and that actually, as I did have debt to my name. But what it taught me, kind of reflecting back on it, was I'm going to be okay. Whether I have nothing or whether I have a lot, I'm going to be okay. And that kind of set the stage for the way I look at risk and other parts of life going forward. So after that, I go ahead.
That's actually an important point, right? Because I think in order to determine that you're going to start something, that fear, the fear factor is like what you have to get over more than anything else, right? That fear of failure, fear that I'm not going to do a good job, the whole sort of imposter syndrome, which is very real, right? Like you feel like you're a fake in a way, right? And the way you get over that is how? That you're okay. You're going to be okay no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Is that like the trigger point essentially for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I've been to the bottom. Even to the point of, I had a small office, living in my office because I couldn't afford an apartment.
So failure kind of taught you that. But by failing, you're like, okay, this is the worst that it can be, right?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. And then, after that, I worked in some companies just to make money to pay back the debt because I used credit cards to finance the business. Not a good way to finance.
You don't recommend that?
I do not recommend that. No.
Buy Dogecoin instead on credit cards.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Just making sure. We're all about financial advice here.
I'm
very
also
sound financial advice.
Also not a fan of friends and family.
Okay.
Yeah. I had some issues there too. So took care of that, but that was all in that first business. So it took me a long time to pay back that credit card debt. It took me like 8 years to pay it all off. So anyway, went to work for another startup as the chief technology officer. That was about the year 2000-ish. And then that company ended up going under. And then I started Appointment Plus. Appointment Plus, the idea for it was not this epiphany where, I'm trying to schedule this appointment and going back and forth on the phone. This is ridiculous. It wasn't that. It was more, I thought it was just a really good idea. And as the internet grew in popularity over time, this idea would also grow in popularity. And I thought that, at some point in the future, every service type business would have online booking.
Right.
And we're not there yet, but it's almost expected at this point that you'd be able to book a haircut or a massage online. It's almost expected now.
Yeah.
And so we're almost there, but that's kind of the vision that I saw for the future.
Amazing. How many customers does Appointment Plus have?
About 5,000 clients.
5,000. Do you guys disclose revenue or anything like that, or is that all private information?
I think I can disclose revenue.
Okay.
So this year will be 15-ish million in revenue.
15. Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Very cool. All right. So what's next for you, by the way? Do you see this continuing to work there long term, or undecided, or what are your thoughts?
You know, so I have a lot of friends who have sold their businesses.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a common theme.
Are you referring to me? Shit.
Nope.
Here it comes.
You're not one of them.
All right, go ahead.
Yes, you are one of them. There's kind of a common theme that you hear, and that is get acquired, work for the acquiring company for a period of time. Sometimes there's an earnout, sometimes there's not. So sometimes you have an incentive to stay there, sometimes you don't. But what ends up happening is they leave for one reason or another, and usually for not the best reasons. Usually it's, I don't like the strategy. I don't like where they're taking my baby. I don't love the people I'm working for. There's various reasons. But usually they end up leaving. So when we got acquired, I was very open and honest with the CEO, even the private equity firm that was involved. And I said, I'm going to do a transition, 3 to 6 months, and then I'm leaving. That's it.
Do you think it's because of burnout, or what was your reason?
What I was going to say was I might stay longer than that.
Nice.
Yeah. Let's come back to burnout.
Okay.
That's a really good topic.
But is that what you
about.
were thinking? Like when you were thinking, okay, I'm done, I want to sell, I want to kind of move on to something else?
Yeah, it's all about unwinding and kind of getting my body and brain back to being able to truly relax. Because when you go 100 miles an hour for years, you can't just shut it off.
Yeah.
A week vacation, 2 weeks vacation, it doesn't do it. It helps, but it takes much longer than that.
Speaking of not being able to shut it off, is like as an entrepreneur, you probably have tons of ideas all the time, right? And when you're in a company or building a company and actively working on it, you can't pursue any of your other ideas, right? So this is probably the one thing that sort of motivated me to sort of be like, okay, maybe I can go see what other ideas I want to pursue. But what are some of the ideas that you haven't been able to pursue that you're excited about that you have?
So what I've done is actively try to not think of ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know the way I'm wired.
This is a sort of a Zen meditation type of thing. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of it is because a company paid a lot of money for my company. And I want to make sure they get the value out of this business that they paid for it.
More than $20.
More than $20,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
And that means I need to continue to be all in on this. I need to focus on this company and transitioning my company into this new company. And if I'm thinking about the next business, next thing I want to do, I don't think it's fair to the acquiring company. So I do not think about that.
I see. You're looking at it post-transaction.
Yeah.
But what about the previous, 15 years that you've been working on this company? You've had tons of ideas that you haven't pursued, right? Like, has that happened actually? Let me just don't assume it.
There's been a couple times where there's been a partial pursuit.
Okay.
And then I have to stop and say, okay, this isn't smart to do this. I need to stay focused on Appointment Plus.
Right.
This is not helpful going down this path. But it's so tempting as an entrepreneur to do that.
We want to solve problems, right?
Yes.
Like it's constant. It never shuts down. I go into a coffee shop. I'm like, I can make it better coffee shop. God damn it. Sucks. It's like a disease.
It is absolutely a disease. But that's actually one of the cool things about being an entrepreneur is you get to build something from nothing. Build something of value that people like, people use, people pay for. That's a really cool feeling to think about. Here's a software system where, I haven't written code for 5 years because now we have people who actually know what the hell they're doing. But like,
just 5 years. Like 5 years ago, the code, you were like literally writing code into the production system.
I'm the worst coder developer in the world.
So now you guys all know where the Appointment Plus bugs came from.
Yes. Oh, yes.
The dev team is like, thanks, Bob, for admitting. But
but it was cool to kind of look back and think, okay, I wrote all that code. And did I make mistakes? Yeah, tons of mistakes. And is it the most elegant code? No, not quite. But it worked. It worked, and we were able to build a multi-million-dollar business on top of this, and people loved it, and it helped their businesses. And that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, I want to change subjects again. Let's talk about tech companies. What do you think? Who do you think is the most powerful tech company in the world right now?
The most powerful tech company. It was Axosoft.
Yes, number 2. It still is Axosoft.
The most powerful. That's an interesting question. So maybe the most influential right now would be Facebook.
Okay.
For everything that's been happening. And
because they can sway public opinion.
Yeah, and the reason I say that, it kind of ties back to GameStop. If you think about, 50 years ago, people talked about stocks. People tried to influence other people to buy or sell stocks, and there's nothing illegal about that, right? It goes on. Well, because of social media, in this case Reddit, you're now able to influence a very large number of people. And get them to act a certain way. And in this case, it was, buying GameStop.
Right.
To stick it to the fat cats.
But that's always been the case since we've had media, essentially. Because there's been there's been always some people. It used to be like Ted Koppel was the guy, right? He was the only one with that power, and then whoever wrote his scripts or whatever. But then later it became, more and more people, and then now it's like anyone can have that power, but it does require, not anyone does, because you still have to have a follower or whatever. You have to have some clout in the internet.
It feels different though. Like the ability now to mobilize a large number of people to do something, it just feels different. Yeah. And maybe it's the timing, how fast it can be done. Yeah. Versus the way Ted Koppel would do it in the past, It just moved a lot more slowly.
Yeah, or generally, because it was just, a handful of people, it would be very likely that they wouldn't do it because there wasn't examples of someone or abusing that power, if you will, and or using it for good even. But now all of a sudden there's lots of examples of everything. Yeah. But it does go super fast. It's fascinating. But let me ask you, okay, so Facebook you think is one of the most powerful. What are your thoughts on Amazon? By the way, Amazon CEO, I can't believe we haven't talked about this yet. Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, stepped down. Andy, what's his name? Chassis? No.
I know who you're talking about, yes.
Andy is now the AWS CEO, who was
Chassis, I think it is. Chassis?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, yeah.
Is now CEO. What are your thoughts about that?
It isn't exactly a Steve Jobs leaving kind of situation. This one feels different. Yeah. And I think the market's also viewing it a little bit differently. And, maybe it was because of the way people revered Steve Jobs in a different way than they might revere Jeff Bezos. They're both amazing entrepreneurs in their own right. They're different, obviously, in the way they go about things and why people love them. But I feel like Amazon is this juggernaut machine that whether he's there or not as CEO, he's still going to play a role. Right. As CEO, I don't see them skipping a beat in what they're doing because there's so much momentum around what they're doing. Yeah. I don't see it causing a real problem with the future of that business.
Okay. I have a different perspective that I want to get your opinion on, which is that when you have a company that large and that powerful being run by the founder, I feel like the direction of the company can be turned on a dime by the founder because, Jeff Bezos would be like, I don't care what you think, this is what we're doing, right? And if he decides, okay, climate change is an important thing that we need to address, he's like, by whatever date, we're going to be climate neutral, period. That's it. We're going to do this. And then a CEO, a different CEO that's not the founder, might not have the same sort of incentive to do the right things, right? Because they're driven by stock price and shareholders and board of directors that's expecting them to sort of constantly build the company bigger and better and more profitable all the time. What are your thoughts about now all of a sudden Amazon falls into that category of company as opposed to a founder driven one?
There's no doubt that a founder-led company is a different company. And part of it, the term I use is the founder is the soul of the company. When the founder moves on, everything changes. The founder will drive the culture of a business, whether they realize they're doing it or not, right? They're driving the culture. They're driving acceptable behaviors. When they move on and someone else comes in, it will impact the culture. But really the difference is, like what you said, the way they think about the business. And we think about a business as the baby, and we care about it at a very, very deep level. That drives a different kind of decision-making process than somebody who is hired by a board of directors to come in and do X, grow the business by 20% a year, or increase the stock price a certain amount. That's a very different mindset. Now, a founder may have those same goals, but the way they do it is very, very different. And I think the way that employees look at the leader is very different when it's a founder versus somebody they bring in, an external CEO that they bring in. And part of it is just the respect that a founder CEO gets, whether they like him or not.
Right.
There's people who hated Steve Jobs. There's people who hate Jeff Bezos that actually work for other companies, but they respect them. An external CEO needs to gain that respect. Will never have the same type of respect as a founder.
Right.
They can be respected, and many are, but it's in a different way. And so, I feel like a company like Amazon can continue to be successful, but it's going to be a little bit different going forward, whether it's a cultural shift or decisions that are made, like you said, or other things. It will be different. There's no doubt.
It's interesting because, when I think about some of these extremely large companies, one of the companies that comes to mind is like Walmart, right? That's been around for some time. And when it was led by Sam Walton, the founder of the company, the guy was like super humble, just always, literally going to stores himself. He was driving, I forget what it was, just like an old beat up car. I mean, it's very interesting. He had a different perspective of what he wanted to build as a company. It wasn't necessarily all driven by profits and growth. And, he was just trying to make something incredibly good for others. But then eventually when other CEOs took over, two steps removed from, like Sam Walton, all of a sudden Walmart is forcing, all kinds of things, bad things to happen. And it makes me a little sad, like Google is no longer run by founders and Amazon is going in that direction to where it's no longer being run by founders. When Steve Jobs stepped down, or, unfortunately he passed away as well, but it makes me sad. These companies are losing a little bit of a little bit of their soul, but also future. Maybe not the immediate next CEO, but the following CEO after that is going to be essentially driven by, motivated by the stock price. And this is what really concerns me long term.
That's a really, really good point. And it's a good question. Do entrepreneurs start a business because of money, because they want to be rich one day? I think that some entrepreneurs do. They're motivated by money. Some are not at all. But what happened to me was I was kind of a little bit of both, but I got to the point and kind of in the evolution of the business where I just had a realization that it wasn't about me anymore. I actually remember a very specific point in time. I was sitting in my office and there were two employees outside my office just talking about, meaningless stuff, what they saw on TV last night. And then, and just kind of going about their business. And it just hit me that this isn't about me. This is about creating a really good workplace for people, allowing people to develop their careers here, allowing people to develop friendships. This is 8 to 10 hours a day of their lives that they're spending in this business. I need to be focusing on that,
Right.
just as much as creating a product that businesses love. I need to focus on making sure that I'm serving the people that work for me, like in a meaningful way. And I think we both talked about this before. When you sold your businesses and when I sold mine, it was a bit anticlimactic.
Very.
And as an entrepreneur, you have to be careful in saying that because typically at the end, you get money, right? There's some money that you get for this thing that you built. And oftentimes, it's life-changing money. And to say that it's anticlimactic would come across wrong to a lot of people that have maybe lost their jobs in the pandemic or just working class people. What are you talking about? You just made a ton of money. I kind of differentiate that in my mind. It's anticlimactic versus it's meaningful. I think it's two very different things.
Yeah.
The anticlimactic part, I think, relates to the cliche that the joy is in the journey, not the destination. Like when I think about building the business, it's not this end point that I think about. I think about the really tough times that we worked through as a team and overcame this major challenge. The awesome wins we had and celebrated as a team, like everything that we went through.
You spent in the data center trying to bring things back up, right? Like just
Yes.
all of those types of, I agree.
Yes, like that's what I think about. And it wasn't all joy at the time.
Right.
But when you look back on it, that's part of the entrepreneurial experience is going through that. And the exit part is, of course, what most entrepreneurs want at some point. And it's part of that journey. It's part of the experience. But when it happens, you're like, okay. And like the way you talk about it is there's now more money in the cloud for you. Like there's more money in this bank account somewhere.
Yeah. In a database.
Yeah,
there's a value in a database that's bigger than before.
Yeah, in a database somewhere. And so the other side of that is you can't think of that in a flippant way because it is meaningful. And what I mean by that is you now have $10 million that you and Law Dan are going to invest in Arizona startups.
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to change lives doing that. You're going to be able to donate more money to charities. I already know that you did a lot of that in the past. Now you can do that even more so. So there's a lot of good things that can come out of that. So it is meaningful that you now have even more money. But I just feel like you got to be a little bit careful with that conversation because people can really misinterpret that.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Soon I want to go to Clubhouse to see if there's any questions from people who are listening in. But before we go there, who do you think is doing the coolest stuff in Arizona, tech company wise?
I have been out of the loop.
Have you?
Yes, I have. So there was a period of time where I was just dialed in.
Yeah.
And I knew everything that was going on and was, participating in all the events and that sort of thing. And I really took a step back from that. And, in some ways I regret that. I really, really miss that and want to get back to doing that. So I'm not really in tune with what the best startups are going on right now in Arizona.
When you were paying attention, what do you think was missing for Arizona to really kick it into gear and be one of the prominent places where startups are thriving and happening?
Yeah, so that was a big part of what you and I were working on, and lots of other people.
Right.
Is how do we build this into a world-class ecosystem? Not trying to be Silicon Valley, not trying to be Austin.
No.
Who are we going to be going forward? And there was some starts and stops, and some let's be this. But the thing that I noticed at that time and still notice is the willingness of people to help.
Yeah.
Just jump in and help.
Very generous.
Very, very generous.
The generosity.
Yes, with time, with money, resources. So that I've really, really noticed, and I know that's still going on because it's kind of the nature of the people that live here.
Are you going to invest with me, Bob, in these companies, the cool company? I'm going to go to Clubhouse as well. I'm going to invite people to come in and speak. But
Yes.
you are going to invest me? Okay,
Yes.
I like that. What kind of commitment are you willing to make?
Mamma mia, are you serious? $20.
$20. I mean, so
I'm gonna pay you
now
back the $20.
our total is $10 million, and $20 is going to be invested in Arizona startups. Okay. Let's see. How do I do this? I thought I am inviting people to speak. Okay, there we go. Let me invite everyone to. Oh, people are raising their hand. There we go. Let's give people an opportunity. So, Adila, go ahead. I think we can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm actually new to Phoenix, Arizona. I come from Vancouver, BC, Canada, which has a huge, startup scene. And actually, my brother owns a creative agency out in Vancouver too. I honestly wasn't even aware there was a big startup scene in Arizona. My question is more for you, Hamid. I'm wondering what kind of was your inspiration to kind of start, the startup, kind of scene in Arizona
Well, I didn't.
or
I,
be a
I didn't
part of the
start.
community.
Actually, before I answer that, let me first say that I've posted that this is a podcast. It's live. It's being recorded. So just a heads up to everyone who, if you do speak, you are being recorded, and it will be posted later as well. But just to be clear, I didn't start the sort of startup scene in Arizona, but I do want to help accelerate it. And my goal is that we can create a thriving ecosystem that allows startups to really flourish here. We have some amazing companies, and what's funny is that there isn't, people don't necessarily know about all these companies that we have and the cool things that they're doing. And this is my reason for having the podcast as well. Like, most people don't know about Bob and Appointment Plus, and he's invisible on social media too, which is which adds to it. But yeah, now that I've had my exits, I figured that it's an opportunity for me to spend some time on a hobby that I enjoy, but also it helps the community as well. So it's a double win-win. I hope that answers your question, Adila.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's what I was gonna say, that I haven't heard of you before, Bob. But it's
What?
great to see it's great to see what you're doing. Sorry.
All right, let me go on to Robert. Robert, did you have a question for Bob?
Yeah, I did. Hi, thank you for giving me the chance to speak. I was really fascinated by the conversation around founders and when a founder leaves. And in particular, I remember in the first week at Apple, we really focused about how important that was when Steve Jobs realized what had happened to Disney. He said, when Disney fell in disarray, he was like, I don't want that to happen. So he created something called Apple University, where it not only empowered the leadership of Apple, but everyone in the organization to think like he wanted everyone else to think, because he didn't want people to think, what would Steve Jobs do? The same way people are wondering, what would Disney do? And so I was wondering, what are your thoughts on, startups or companies adopting a similar type of model where you create a university or you create some type of structure where you teach employees about the values and mission of the company that help it grow away from the founder syndrome? I was curious your thoughts on that.
Bob?
Yeah, I love that question. To me, that's more of a kind of a philosophical thing that a founder has. It's either, here's my way, do it my way, I have the best ideas, or I want to hear what you guys have to think. Don't change your thinking just because I think a certain way. And this is oftentimes what I tell new employees when they come on board. Yes, our business has a certain way of doing things. Don't do things that way. We're hiring you for a reason. Bring in your experiences, bring in your ideas, challenge what we do. We want to hear what you have to say. Now, that's easier said than done Because a culture is very powerful. Like whether you realize it or not, when you come into a business, it's there. It's like the air that you breathe. It's very, very powerful, and it's hard to go against it. But from a philosophical standpoint, I agree 100% that that's the way you should handle it. Whether it's starting a university, that talks about, here's the way we do business. Now tell us how we can do this differently to improve it. I love that concept.
Very cool. I actually wanted to comment on that as well because I remember what you were talking about, Robert, with Steve Jobs saying, I don't want the next CEO of Apple to be thinking about what would I do and try to run Apple the way I would run it. But it is interesting the difference of Tim Cook's Apple versus Steve Jobs's. Tim Cook is essentially taken Apple and started coasting with it, in my opinion. I mean, since Steve Jobs, in the past almost 10 years now that Cook has been CEO, Apple has had very few new products, except for the continuation, the same cycle that Steve Jobs had already established with every year we're going to have a new iPhone and the iPad and MacBooks and so on. He's just continued that same cycle. And new product introductions have been sort of lackluster, introducing a $300 smart speaker when everybody, first of all, not only years late, but when everybody else's smart speaker was like $40 or $30, just having so many misses. A $6,000 monitor when you don't have a normal monitor for every laptop user who has to have another monitor on their desk that's not Apple. I mean, I don't think Steve Jobs would have ever allowed for that to happen. So to some extent, I wish Tim Cook would ask the question, what would Steve Jobs have done? He would not have released a $6,000 monitor before he had a $1,000 one or $1,500 one. So super interesting.
You know what I think is part of the problem? Yeah. They may ask, what would Steve Jobs have done? And they can't think like he thinks.
Oh, yeah.
So they come out with a $6,000 monitor.
Yeah. The very best. He would have insisted on the very
exactly,
best.
Right.
So that could have easily led to the wrong conclusion there.
Right.
Robert, did you have a follow-up based on Robert?
No, it's just interesting, like hearing the conversation and thoughts and ideas around, what originally the question was. But yeah, there's some interesting points to talk about. But I appreciate the time. I mean, I can go all day talking about that. So I won't take up any more time. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay,
it was really good insight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Robert. And Laura, did you have a question?
Hi guys, I'm Laura, and I just had a question for both of you about, networking and the Clubhouse app that we're using now, and also like how that ties in with COVID. So, I think the last year has really renewed the craving for a sense of community in the business world and the ability to like network in person. I'm really early on in my career, and so I feel like I've missed out on a lot of those opportunities to network and meet people in person. So I was just wondering what your thoughts were in terms of, what you would suggest for someone like me, what you're looking forward to as we kind of come out of this COVID era, and then also, maybe how you envision using Clubhouse or other platforms to help spur that on.
Great. I'll let you take it first.
Sure. This pandemic has been really painful for humans in general, and we know that some of the biggest losers are the kids that have to deal with this. With regard to not being able to see their friends, not being able to go to school, that sort of thing. The social aspect, it's one of those things where you don't realize how important it is until it's gone. Like they talk about your health, you don't really think too much about it until you got problems, right? You think a lot about it. It's kind of sad. Obviously, none of us like this, but I mean, I see the effects with regard to maintaining relationships. You can keep conversations going over the phone, through Zoom, through mediums like this, but there's no substitute for person to person. And I do agree that people are just dying to get back to that. Just sort of, physical interaction with humans. And it's part of why you're seeing, when we eased here in Arizona, you can go back to restaurants, you can start doing this. people kind of trickled in a little bit to the gym, and now it's packed.
Yeah.
They kind of dip their toes in the water, and now restaurants are packed because they just crave that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's part of being a human being, is connecting with other humans. And one of the things I worry about are the long-term impacts of this on mental health. They talk about like that being like the next pandemic, the next major health issue is mental health. What happens as a result of all this isolation. So I do worry about that. As far as what to do about it, I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities still for connecting with people. This is one of them. And I would encourage you to do that. It's just that you're not going to get the same level of connection, of course,
Than in person events.
But it sets up for when you do meet in person, you at least have a certain level of relationship.
Yeah.
Which I think is important.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Laura, to just add on that, Clubhouse is a great substitute, if you will, for it's kind of interesting. I only discovered it less than 10 days ago, and it's been fascinating to actually hear people that I've been talking with on Twitter or responding to on Twitter, followers and people I follow. And all of a sudden the conversation came on and it added a different dimension with voice that creates a closer connection as a result of just hearing the person, which is fascinating. Thank you for that question. Karen, did you have a question for Bob?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, thanks. This is my first day on Clubhouse.
Woohoo!
It's really surprising.
It's also Bob's.
And Bob's. Hi, Bob.
It's true.
That's
Hello.
awesome. So I was just curious. I went to grad school in Arizona at Thunderbird Global School of Management. Yay!
Yay!
And was just about to. I'm bringing on some interns from there too. So I'm very excited about that because I work with Vacuum Labs. We do business development on the fintech and healthcare side. Anyway, and my question for you, Bob, was how has you do appointment scheduling? So I'm assuming did you have a huge spike in your business after COVID, during COVID? How did you navigate that bump, or was there a bump? And did you see any new customers coming in as a result of it? And now that we're kind of in the middle of it and seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, how do you plan on your business changing once that changes? Although maybe since you've gotten acquired, you're not. Are you guiding that strategy?
That's a great question. Yeah, the business shifted. So our lowest point was April. So we took a revenue hit in April, and coming out of that, we did well in 2020. But our marketing changed, and who we ended up closing deals with changed. So it was no longer the service type businesses, like I said, that the pet groomer, the massage therapist, the hair salon, personal trainers. We weren't getting them anymore. It shifted over to other types of businesses, a lot of them government businesses, that, these essential businesses that had to keep going. And, that, like I said, it impacted our marketing. And then coming out of that, we've kind of kept with that marketing. So a lot of bigger institutions continuing to market to enterprise. So one of the things that's actually different about Appointment Plus is it's enterprise scheduling software. So we actually don't target mom and pops. We target bigger companies. Mm-hmm. But they also stopped buying. But the ones that were more essential saw an even bigger need to do appointment scheduling. And a lot of it was because of the way their businesses shifted. Like if you think about a bank, for example, whereas previously you might book an appointment to see a banker for a loan. Well, then it switched to you got to book an appointment for everything for the bank, like even to come into the bank. So we saw a lot of that shift going on, and that's still going on. Obviously the pandemic is still raging, unfortunately. So we haven't seen a shift back to those other types of service-related businesses that I mentioned, but I expect that to happen. But those types of businesses definitely filled the void. from a revenue and procuring new client standpoint, and also an expansion standpoint. That's a big part of our strategy is foot in the door and then expand from there, and that definitely was happening pretty much all of last year.
And did they come to you, Bob, or those customers come to you, or did you go to them?
They come to us. So we do no outbound marketing. No outbound sales. It's all through marketing efforts that they come to us. So they find us, through a Google search, for example, or LinkedIn ad or something like that. So it's all inbound marketing, and that's it. That's the way they find us.
Very cool.
And I think one of the most exciting startups I've seen to come out of Arizona is Homey. I was down for Startup Week before the shutdown, so that's my nomination. And since my business, most of my work is in healthcare and in fintech, software development, and I'm just curious. You do bank appointment scheduling as well? And
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we do a lot of healthcare too.
Karen, what does Homey do, real quick?
Homey is it's a disruptive business in the real estate market, and they are attempting to remove real estate.
Oh, the agents.
The realtor is removed from the process, and
kind of like Open Door, and there's another one.
Yeah, but there's a flat fee.
Right.
And I think they pay like $2,000, $2,500 to sell a home.
Okay, very cool.
And so, considerable closing costs.
Difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing I just wanted to mention to you both is I've done some work with the FinTech Sandbox for the state of Arizona. And that's been interesting too, especially in regulated environments, right? Now it's for fintech only right now, and there's been some lending services as well as payment services launched and incubated out of the sandbox because a lot of startups have no place to go in a regulated environment. Like they just don't know what to do,
right.
And then they think, oh gosh, we have to raise all this capital to pay some lawyers to tell us what to do because we don't want to go to jail, and or be Wirecard or something.
Yeah.
And so this really helps ease the process with a flat fee, but there's been some interesting, I think Movify was one of them. That's one of the first that comes to mind, like micro-lending, pay as you go, like pay at the point of sale, etc.
Very cool. Thank you very much, Karen.
You're very welcome.
Ed, I saw you up here in the speakers. Did you want to come back up and speak, ask Bob a question, if you're listening, Ed?
Oh, no, I'm actually good. But I really appreciate your guys' input and this session that you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Adila. No worries. I was speaking to Ed Nussbaum, though. No worries. There we go. We got Ed in here. Ed, did you have a question for Bob?
Actually, I have one for you. What's all this about AZ Tech Podcast and AZ Tech Beat and all the other wonderful things you're up to?
You have to watch the announcement video, Ed, on all of that stuff. But I'll give you the 30-second version. But basically, my wife Lauren and I have decided to invest in the Arizona startup community. We've set aside $10 million over the next few years that we're going to invest in startups, especially on the early stage startups. So the hope is to build 100 startups in Arizona that are doing some amazing things. And then in support of that, we're relaunching aztechbeat.com and, of course, this podcast, which is AZ Tech Podcast, which this is the first episode of. And I want to thank Bob for being here as my first guinea pig, if you will. And thank you everyone for listening in on Clubhouse as well. So it's been a lot of fun. Bob, what did you think?
I was going to talk about how I freaked you out last night.
Oh yeah,
when I texted you. I said, "Yeah, I'm not feeling so great."
Was that a lie?
No, it was true. I had a headache last night. Serious.
So I'm going to send the ambulance for you, but we're doing this thing. It's happening. Very cool. Anything that you wanted to cover that we didn't cover, Bob?
Basketball.
The way. Okay, go ahead. What about basketball?
Hamid has a basketball court at his house, and whenever we play, I kick his ass. That's the main thing.
Wishful thinking.
Actually, that is not true. We've actually only played one-on-one one time, and you beat me.
I feel like we played twice, and then the second time you got revenge on me. You're like,
Did I? I don't remember
I
that.
think so.
I remember the loss. I think the loss is hard.
Well, see, you remember your loss. I remember my loss. So we're competitive people here. But holy cow, it's been fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're going to wrap it up then. Appreciate it.
You bet. This has been a blast.
Awesome. I'm glad you were the first.
I appreciate it. I am honored to be the first.
Still so many things I want to talk to you about, so we'll have to have you back at some point in the future. So
Would love it.
all right. Thanks, Bob.
All right.
Bye.
You are welcome.